Hello and welcome to the show. And today we're talking about human vulnerabilities. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not perfect. Far from it, in fact. But I'm not deliberately imperfect either. In general, like most people, I try my best at what I do. I like to think I do anyway, and I try to learn from the mistakes that I make and, from feedback I receive, growth mindset and all that. However, these imperfections contribute to humans often being characterized as the weak link when it comes to an organization's cyber risk. And, well, while there are some strong challenges and opinions about how helpful an expression that is, human vulnerabilities are increasingly being targeted by bad actors, finding more success in exploiting humans and their vulnerabilities than security gaps in operating systems, web services, or hardware appliances. So today we're going to take a deeper look at a couple of different approaches to mitigating this human risk by creating feedback loops, teaching opportunities, growth mindset moments, call them whatever you will. Joining me, as always, is Metacompliance CEO, author of Cybersecurity Awareness for Dummies, Robbie OBrien. Hello, Robbie.
Hi, David. Good to see you again. Looking forward to having a chat today about ways that we can begin to make progress with the participation of our user base and how we can get senior management to help us out with that. So, yes, let's get started.
Good stuff. We have a special guest today. He is a hacker, author, CCO, Chief Chaos Officer at TrueSec. It's Jason E. Streets. Hello, Jason. Good to meet you.
Hiya. Nice to have me. I'm looking forward to this and just can't wait to get started.
No, me neither. Now, one thing I do have to ask is that in your bio on your websites, on your various online presences, you like to be introduced as a hacker, a helper, and a human. What's the thinking behind that?
My whole thing is like, we try to get to the point where it's like, we have all these words where we identify ourselves like, oh, this person's this and this category. And it's like, and no, it's like I'm a hacker. It's like, I love to help people and we're all human. It's like trying to divide it into more groups or trying to create is just ridiculous. It's like, we're all human, period. It's like, it doesn't matter anything else, geographical locations, anything else. It's like detracts from the fact that we need to treat each other as human.
Yeah, well, and that human thing is absolutely central to what we're talking about here today, this essence of humanity and what it means as far as ensuring our workplaces are as secure as they can be. And Jason, to kick us off today, I'd like to hear more about the kind of work that you do when you're engaged to test an organization's security. What's your modus operandi? What, set the scene. People haven't come across you before. What is it they actually do?
Well, I always have my short answer, which is I rob banks for a living. But I think it goes a little bit further with the fact that what I do is not your typical, most people talk about red teaming or penetration testing or things like that, where it's like looking for vulnerabilities, looking for things that are out of compliance. And I'm not that guy. When a company hires me, they're hiring me to become a teachable moment for security awareness engagement. And so they understand that. So in other words, it's like PCI compliant, Sarbanes-Oxley, Grant-Wish, any other old white dude you want to talk about, that's fine. I don't care about those compliances. What I care about is stealing from you, causing damage to your location, doing espionage and grabbing company secrets. I'm not thinking like an auditor. It's like, I'm not thinking like a penetration. I am thinking of, if I was a criminal and an attacker, what is the worst thing I could do? It's like, and how much could I get away with at that moment? And so that's how I do mine. So usually I promise them, my clients, at least two different things. One is that I will do my very best to be the worst thing that's ever happened to them. And I also promise them that I will get caught by the end of the engagement. Even if I have to make myself get caught, which, trust me, I've gone through hilarious links to make sure that happens. because we've got to give, once again, this is a teachable moment. It's not about exploitation. It's about education. I'm there to educate them and give them something. And you can't just keep telling your employees all the things they do wrong without giving them something to look up to. So I always make sure there is someone that caught me, that did the right thing, that you can use as a tool instead of saying, this is where everybody failed. It's like, we need to do more like this person. We need to do more what this person did. This is how this person detected me. This is how this person went about capturing me or questioning me and made it where they discovered who I was. It's like, and that's where you teach from, not from where everything went wrong.
Yeah, so very much in mind is what a bad actor, whatever their motivation, whatever their goal is, that they are after a thing. The bad actors don't set out to exploit a zero-day vulnerability in XYZ firewall or whatever it is. They are trying to get their hands on a thing. So adopting that mindset, and then, like you say, it's all about creating these teaching moments. And, you know,
Right.
Winners and losers aside, it's not about losing, it's about learning.
Oh, yeah, I tell them, it's like, no, it's like, that's one of the main things I talked, because every time after I successfully escape from a location, showing that I compromised all of them, I wait for 2 minutes, which establishes that I successfully escaped. Then I go back in, and with a company representative, I talk to each person. And that's where the real work begins. That's why I'm hired, because then I have to tell that person, oh yeah, I was a bad guy and you helped me do bad things. Here's how we can make sure that doesn't happen again. And I have to turn that into a positive experience. And one of the main things I explain to them is that, look, this was not a test. It's like, it was a teachable moment. It was, you didn't lose, you learned. That wasn't a loss, that was a lesson. It's like, it wasn't trying to test you. We were trying to teach you how these things occur so you'll be better prepared for them. So yeah, that is the key thing. It's like, it's not about, there are no losers in this environment. It's like everybody wins because they understand now better how these kind of attacks occur.
I also think it's the senior execs that let you loose on their organization have a higher level of maturity. And that, I mean, I was lucky enough to hear one of your talks at RSA just before COVID. And I thought to myself that the practicality of essentially exposing people to a friendly face of what, you know, the enemy looks like, both in terms of the executives that contracted, because they all had to know about it, and then on the ground, the various people. I thought it was a phenomenal way of as a catalyst to get change, because you're looking for ways to move outside the don't click on the link, don't pick up a USB, all this sort of like that. We've been doing that for years to a certain extent with very little impact. So I thought that actually it's a organization that's more mature, that actually is trying new things, that are the people that bring in Jason. And it's actually showing how innovative the bad actors are going to be, and letting people see really the other side of the desk, so to speak.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the things that you keyed on was kudos to the executives, because it takes that kind of executive action to make those kind of changes happen. I literally was in Tel Aviv last week talking, and literally my ending bullet point of information I wanted to make sure I got out there was explaining to all the executives in the room, because these were like I don't usually get a chance to talk to these kind of people at this conference. And I explained, it's like, dear executives, you're the biggest threat to information security is executives. And people don't want to talk about that. But unfortunately, I'm not trying to sell you a blinky box. I'm going to tell you, you're the problem. It's you. It's like, so, and what I mean by that is, if an executive has an exemption to the password change policy that happens every 90 days, or if they have an exemption to this, well, then everybody that reports to them feel like they have an exemption. So if you have an exemption to your security policy, congratulations, you don't really have a security policy. It's like, so, but when an executive understands the need for security, when they literally let their employees know that they take security seriously, by golly, every single employee is going to take it seriously because they realize that's part of keeping their job. Because if the executive is going to care about it, they have to care about it too.
I want to come back to that executive piece, the executive threat, the VIPs, the VAPs, and when you are doing penetration tests of all the various different types, what the challenges are around that. But first of all, Robbie, obviously we've heard from Jason there about the kind of offensive security lesson learning led approach that he takes. Security awareness operates on multiple layers, of course, in many organizations. So tell me how the work that Jason and his cohort complements the kind of human vulnerability mitigation work that you do.
So I think that, it's not surprising that one of the phrases in our industry is persistent threat. It's ever present. And so you need a number of different approaches to get front of mind, right? I believe that the best type of change is change that happens gradually. You start in one point and you look back over time and go, how do we move? How do we move to here? And actually you moved in small incremental stages. It was, and sometimes it takes a very long time. So you need this constant, relevant background noise, so to speak, which is what we do. And then I think where the executive comes in is that they add this overlay, be it, a level of real buy-in to like an awareness month, or bringing somebody like Jason in to have this complete sort of reboot of everybody's mindset. Then when Jason goes, you need to start giving people that ongoing education in a really viable way. And I think if I was to look at it, if you get a bunch of executives in the room and they hear a presentation with Jason, number one, it's really entertaining. And number two, you're going to go away and you're going to be thinking about it. The next thing is well, how can I do that? What do I need to do? And so therefore you need another sort of parallel engagement process where what people are being asked to participate in is not mind-numbingly boring, but actually something that takes them on that journey over time.
Yeah, and from your side of the fence, Jason, then in that case, as Robbie says, with engagements like yours, high profile, high impact, high value lesson learning points. But then how do you engage with execs, with organizations to ensure that there is that, as Robbie says, that drumbeat, that rhythm that keeps that message going throughout the rest of the year?
Yeah, he brought up a very good point. And see, this whole industry, we're all full of ADHDers and people that are like on the spectrum, like, oh, I don't know how to we want to do all this. But then when it comes to that hard work of like every day or like every month, that's where those lessons and those daily lessons of security work, that's where it's valuable. I can bring you the flash and bang and show why it's important. But if you don't have an infrastructure in place to actually keep that going through the year and keep that buy-in going and showing that importance, it's going to fade. It's like, because you're going to have attrition, you're going to have new employees, you're going to have old employees leaving. It's like, and you're going to have new environments shifting. So you have to have a constant. It can't just be this one weird hacker dude showing up and scaring everybody, going, look, you got to fix it. It's like, and then think that everything's going to be fixed.
Yeah.
Because then that's going to lose impact. So one of the things that I do is I teach classes. I'm teaching one at DevCon. I teach classes all over. And one of the things I talk about is like how to create an internal security awareness program for information security, and how to use outside sources to keep that, because IT security people are busy breaking things and fixing things. They can't manage the security awareness, all of it. It's like they can start initiating it. They start to get company buy-in. They can start doing some of the things that they need, but they do need that help to keep that going and have that structure through the whole year. It's like, it's good to have occurrences like me happen every once in a while. Come in a yearly meeting. It's like, company meeting, and I'll come in and give a 2-hour presentation and tell everybody how I can do things, or do the engagement where I just break in and actually show everybody how it happens. But that's good for short-term investment and buy into the security process. But to keep people engaged, to keep it going, that is a year-long and ongoing and never-ending process, as long as you're a company and trying to be viable.
And I think where the big overlap with what Jason does and what we do, I think it resonates with me, is when you're in doing whether you're doing a presentation or whether you're actually doing an engagement, you're making that personal to that environment. You're going in physically to an environment and using behavioral science and psychology to sort of work your way through. If you heard one of his stories, it's almost like a magician, right? From our side, it's a bit like what you said, Jason, where, IT security people have a unique set of traits and a unique set of personalities. So you better have training that resonates with them. There's no point giving them the training that you give to the finance people, to the IT security people, the privileged user. There's no point. And vice versa, there's no point giving overly technical stuff to the finance people. So I think where the industry is going is, there's definitely a maturity happening. The sort of bland, one-size-fits-all training, it just isn't cutting it. Sending phishing emails isn't enough. It requires us as an industry to get more focused, to get more mature, and just up the game. And I think it takes a number of different things to actually make it personal for individuals, to give them something that, in actual fact, catches a bit of their mind share, right? So that's what you're trying to do in their busy lives. Just get a bit in there that says, pay attention to this in your life.
One size fits all fits nobody, I guess. And on that personalization point, making it personal, Jason, I'm sure you've got some standard strategies that you regularly try with clients, a pretext physical entry, tailgating, all of that standard stuff for the access stuff. But in terms of the personalization work that you do, how do you tailor the different types of attacks when you're going after a particular VIP, VAP, whatever?
Do you want the really cool professional answer that you're supposed to give, or do you want just my honest thing, how I do it?
Oh, we want the honest, Jason, always the honest.
Oh, okay. It's like, I hate that. I lie for a living, so I don't do it for free. So it's like, you caught me on the spot with that one, because I'm like, my boss may not like, I yell with it. It's like, it's like people want to think that they're like, I can teach how to do all the processes, but literally to me, a lot of it's just instant. I mean, literally, I will go in and I will just walk into the front door of a building and then just see what I can do. And I mean, like, I've never been there. I didn't do any research or recon. I don't know who's there. It's like, I don't know who the manager is. It's like, and then within 3 minutes of being in the building, the manager is walking me around, helping me rob the place. But it's not because it was a plan. It was not because it was my fiendish, plot. It was, let's see if it works. It can happen, right? It's like, which is, to me, I think, more terrifying than if I tell you I had this advantage. Like, people want to think that it's like I'm using all this, all these techniques and all this skill. Like, no, that's not, because that'll give you false sense of security. You should be terrified because it's so easy. It's like people talk about, like, well, what kind of lockpicks do you use? Well, I use cardboard. It's like the only thing I've successfully broken into a building with is cardboard. And yes, it is the cardboard I stole from the company's dumpster to use to break into their building. One time I used airplanes. I used paper airplanes, shooting them through the cracks, trying to get the motion sensor, until the lady came up and asked me what I was doing, and told her I was waiting to do an audit, and the person hadn't come and got me yet. I said, well, you need to go pick those up. It's like, well, if you let me in, I'll pick them up and I'll go to them. And so she let me in.
Oh.
It's like, so yeah. So it's not the skill set. It's like, you've got to understand that is one of the things that you got to worry about, is that we don't have these advanced plans. When I'm doing a phishing attack, and I did this one to a CEO, It was literally I tell my clients, I will give you no more than 2 hours of research to find an effective way to attack you. And I promise you, I will only use Google and your website. So literally, that's how I do it. And I literally, a CEO who hired me, I compromised him and he and fished him successfully because I went to his website, found out all this information about him, found his Twitter account. 3 months before he was at a conference, it's like I assumed the identity of one of the speakers, sent him an email saying from that, like I was like that speaker, saying, hey, we discussed at this conference, we were interested in you being one of our board of directors for our new initiative that we're starting in the region. It's like, click on the link and you can see the website and more details. They clicked it within 12 hours. It's like receiving it. And that shows what I do. That is the extent of the research and recon I'm doing. It's like, so that is the reason why it's so important to be, and to touch a little bit on what Robert said earlier, it's like when he was talking about having that plan and that struggle, it's like, to me, that's one of the most important things because that's the foundation. And one thing you have to understand, I'm giving you some really pretty drapes for like pulling those apart, or it's like, I'm helping design like really cool looking houses, but the foundation is ugly. Yeah. We keep overlooking that building a house depends on how good that foundation is, and that job sucks. It's like you got to pour concrete and rebar, and you got like everybody's getting all dirty and yucky. It's like you gotta. It's anybody ever go into a house that they're looking at and they want to know what the foundation looks like to see if it's pretty? No, they don't care what the foundation looks like. Who cares? No one really looks at it until it cracks.
Yeah.
No one ever really looks at a foundation until something goes wrong with it. But it doesn't matter how pretty that house is, that the foundation falls. And putting in this baseline of information, putting this baseline of education, putting this baseline of work in to securing your operations and stuff is not a glamorous job. It's not a fun job, but it's the most vital one.
I think it's really interesting that you focus on C-level guys and you focus on IT security or tech guys, right? Because for me, those are two of the top three, the other one being the finance guys. But I have found that the finance guys are under so much, and there's been so many scams and they're getting it steady. So people are trying to steal money. So that's relatively straightforward. But the C-level guys or the executives and the security are, you can't touch this. Like, we're above all this. That's for the ordinary people. That's not for us. And I think that is like a fundamental flaw and probably goes to the maturity. Like that I think will be the last two bastions to fall in terms of this becoming, custom and practice for the way we operate, Those are the two difficult for everybody that is, listening to this or watching this today. That's where the rubber meets the road. And if you were to go for one and crack one, it has to be C-level, because if you've got that on board consistently over time, if those guys will put in the long hours and give you the face time and give you the money, then that's the tipping point for success for me.
Do you want to know the most terrifying, heart-wrenching question you can ask an executive?
Yes, sir.
Look, the question is, does your assistant book all your travel and take care of your expenses? And the problem is that is a red flag. The problem with that is very simple. It's like the answer is yes, and that is the reason why I tell all executives, my main target when I'm going into I'm not going after you, I'm going after your assistant, because your assistant invariably has a document on their desktop or a notes inside their Outlook file that has the executive's passwords, user IDs, not just for the network login, but for all their credit card accounts, their credit card numbers, data,
store details.
Yeah. It's because they're the ones booking all the travel. They're the ones that have to make sure everything's taken care of. And that is terrifying. I was in a conference in the Dominican Republic, and I remember an outburst during the audit when I was talking about how I go after executives because of that, assistants because of that file. And there was a ruckus because an executive had turned around and asked their assistant if they had that file, and they just like, yeah. And they were screaming. I'm like, delete it now. 1 month from now, if they don't have that stuff fixed, it's like 1 month from now, they're going to make that person put that file back on because they want streamlined. They want it to be easy.
Yeah.
There's an agent for them because they're the executive.
It's convenience versus security controls, right?
Exactly.
That was ever the conflict. And this is what we talk about VIPs and VAPs, those very attacked people as well.
Yeah.
And just keeping on that line of thought around the importance of C-level engagement there. You know, we talk about engaging with a CEO and all the rest of the board as being really important to land those cyber awareness campaign messages amongst a workforce. But what challenges have you both found when actually targeting an organization's VAPs, whether it is through some kind of phishing attack or whether it's through some more direct attack? How have you found that's gone down, gentlemen?
So for me, when we'd agreed with one customer that we would target their execs really as a way of justifying the overall project to go out to everyone else. Sort of, they could go, the CISO could go to the board and say, just for effect, here we've hacked you guys, and here's who fell victim to it. And on the morning of it was just a phishing attack. On the morning of phishing attack, it was pulled. And what they said to me was that it had got to do with the fact that failure in a technology sense has a sense of social shame for us as individuals, right? That most people get a new application and you're supposed to learn how to use it yourself. I mean, who taught you how to use Instagram, right? You find out yourself, or you say, "How do you do this?" You know, there are training courses, no doubt, but a lot of it self-learn. So if you can't actually use technology, you can't use the software, then there's this social stigma associated with it. And they felt that if they did go after the execs and they did fall for it, that you wouldn't have got a normal response. You would have got behaviors that might have been detrimental to their careers, that their egos might not have coped with it. And it would have been that shame in that peer group that, I didn't fall for it, but Johnny fell for it here. That was the first time I came across that there is a power in terms of the people falling victim to or falling foul of the training, and how you use that positively is the opportunity. But overusing it clearly can have a backlash and give you a bad experience for the people participating.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There are several things to what you were talking about. Well, the first one that I go off of is when you were talking about how they may not be familiar with it, like, the program. And I am so tired of that stigma. People need to stop making computers seem like it's something different than just a piece of equipment. It gets you email, internet, video games. Well, for me, it's like, and anything else, but it does what you need it to do. Why should an executive or anybody else who doesn't work with computers on a daily basis care about what all the other possibilities are, or that's why they hire information security? And that's one of the biggest problems that we don't talk about enough, is that information security is really, really horrible at communicating to executives and employees in ways that they can understand. Stop talking to executives and saying that it's a stupid executive or a stupid boss because they don't understand what you're trying to say. It's not their job to understand the terminology and the dynamics behind the technology you're talking about. It is your job to communicate it in a way that they can understand it. We've got to get better at communicating not just the importance of security awareness, but we need to do better at how and we communicate it and what we're trying to say. If you can't explain something simply, it's like you really don't know what you're talking about, to paraphrase and butcher a wonderful quote from Albert Einstein.
I was at a big cybersecurity conference here in the UK a few weeks ago. Robbie, you know all about this, in Security Europe. And in more than one session, there was a question that went around. It's probably the question of the year for whatever reason. And it was the point at which the board either made a big investment decision or suddenly got it. And in both of the sessions specifically that I'm thinking about, it wasn't some big presentation. It wasn't some big communication from the CISO or whoever it was. It was an actual breach. There was a security incident that suddenly gave the board that kick up the backside, and the money and the focus and the attention suddenly came flowing down to the rest of the organization.
Oh, 100%. The best way to make sure that your company buys your insurance program and re-ups their fire insurance, burn the building down across the street. It's like, I mean, and that's another paraphrase of a quote of somebody, I forgot who it was, but I'm stealing it now. But the whole point of that is that is important. It's like Winston Churchill once said, there's nothing more exhilarating than being fired upon without effect. It's like, we have to give them that, what I call it a high impact, low risk situation. It's like they've got to, and that's the high impact is this going to take it out their network. It's low risk because of the fact that I was hired to do it. It's like, but to see it, to actually see it, because and this, once again, it goes to human nature. It's not about executives. It's not about anybody. It's about humans. The stove is hot. Really? Are you sure about that? I've never been around a stove. Is it really? Oh, that's hot. Okay, I can't touch that. That's going to be bad. So we need to show them in real life exactly how these things occur. It's like, so, and without giving them the risk, so they can visualize it and finally see. Because have you noticed in so many headlines, it's like, and especially in America, it's like you see so many headlines where it's like, a quiet neighborhood was rocked today. It's like, have you noticed all these really horrible, sketchy things happen in quiet neighborhoods? I want to live in a loud urban environment, okay? Because all these quiet neighborhoods always have these things that occur, like, because no one is like, oh no, I never expected something weird. No, he was a quiet guy, kept mostly to himself. We didn't know about the hidden basement. It's like, yeah, it's always those kind of moments. It's like, so what you need to do is let them see it without being hurt by it, how this thing really happened. Because until they witness it, until they experience that compromise, knowing that, oh, wow, I would have clicked that link, or, oh, wow, this bad person came in. It's like, that is when they're going to start realizing, okay, yes, we had to take this seriously. The best thing that you can do, show them news clippings from other breaches. Show them how that would apply to you.
Yeah.
When Heartbleed came out, show them it's like, oh yeah, we're going to be hit by this. It's like, if we get targeted, we'll be down. It's like, show them some of these vulnerabilities that are out there saying, oh yeah, luckily or also say, well, luckily we had this investment. It's like, you invested in this part of our security, so we're able to mitigate most of this risk. It's like, because of that investment. And so we're not as susceptible to this vulnerability as others. But showing them how that works and how that ties in to your environment and to your company and the viability of your company. Target is one of the best examples. It's like they lost $350 million on a phishing email from a partner company. And you just ask your employees at a meeting, showing them all this information, and say, anybody here, can you raise your hand if you think we could lose $350 million and shrugging it off in our company? Yeah. It's like, are we good with that? Are we good with losing that? It's like, yeah. It's like, well, I mean, unless you work for somebody like Target, obviously, it's like that the answer, yes. But not many people can.
Yeah. For me, David, there is obviously, if you have a near miss or you have a breach, behaviors change. But I think every board of directors that I've talked to, they know there's a problem here. Like, without a shadow of a doubt, this is a boardroom issue. It's something that is dealt with if a company's going through due diligence. It's talked about. Every contract that an organization signs with the public sector or signs with each other at the contract stage, so nothing to do with cybersecurity professionals, at the contract stage, everyone's trying to lay off the risk, like bookies, right? They're trying to lay off their risk to somebody else. And it's typically the big company lays off the risk to the small company. So if there's a breach, we're going to come along and we're going to take all your liability, your cybersecurity insurance to pay for our problems. So they absolutely know there's a problem. These things manifest themselves in business problems that our industry doesn't see, right? But the problem is, it's very hard to articulate. It's very hard for our industry to articulate to them, this is what you should do, right? And I've always felt that we should look to the sort of oil and gas industry, because they had a similar type of thing at the time of the Exxon Valdez, where, you know, they had a big tanker crashed up in, I think it was Canada, pollution everywhere. And that had been going on for years and years and years and years. I mean, at that point in time, their industry was under threat. So they, as an entire industry, decided, right, zero tolerance. In fact, they called it zero hurt, right? Zero hurt. And I worked as a contractor for Shell for a while. You walk into Shell's headquarters, and up was a big LED display, and it says, today that we have had no safety incidents in Shell worldwide. Same if you went into BP, if you went into any of the other big process industries. So safety became their big thing. And indeed, one day I walked in and they said, we've had a fatality. And what it was some guy who was flying from the Philippines to Kuala Lumpur had, you know, the deep vein thrombosis and he died. But because he was on a business flight, right, he wasn't in a plane, nothing fell on him. And they took that as, that's our bad. He was on our time. This guy died. Our stats all went down, and they would have went and then had a whole awareness around, if you're flying and you've got these problems, do this. So every meeting you start in the process industry, you have to start it with what they call a safety moment, right? You have to start it with a safety moment. And it's, if you're not used to it, it's quite weird. I remember having a meeting, and it was coming up to Christmas, and like it was a meeting with people in different areas, and the guy who was holding the meeting said, listen, for the safety moment, I want to tell you that at this Christmas time, and you shouldn't really leave the house without turning off your Christmas lights. You know, that's a big problem. And I was like, what the hell does Christmas lights have to do with oil and gas? But that was how deeply rooted that was. And the key to it all is that the execs were completely bought in. And so you walk in and they would be standing on safety day or whatever safety month that they have, handing out bottles which had safety on it. So the level of investment, not money-wise, but a level of brain power that was invested in that is so far beyond where we are currently at in the cybersecurity industry as to be almost, you know, aspirational. But it begins with conversations like this, which is we have to couch this in ways that, as Jason says, ways that the C-level can understand, and also give them a way forward. Tell them this is what you have to do. And a lot of it is very little. A lot of it is just show up often, and always show up and do what you need to do to back me up, to make sure that everybody else takes this seriously.
So there's absolutely the top-down conversation here as far as the ensuring board-level engagement, C-level engagement, absolutely. But I think there's also an element for us to explore, investigate in terms of the bottom up, in terms of the frontline response as well, because we're talking about humans, and people who are at the front line of facing cybersecurity threats are humans and are vulnerable, just like the C-level execs are. And to kind of bring us into that, Jason, there's a story that you tell around a bank that you infiltrated in Jordan, well, just walked into, I think, in Jordan, and started doing some stuff that was, well, highly questionable. Could you kick us off and just tell us a bit about that story?
Yes, I was in Amman, Jordan, robbing a bank there for a client, and I'd gotten in and I was plugging in a device that opened up a payload. It was just Notepad because once again, it's educational, not exploitation. And it's like, so it's like, it was just opening up Notepad, automatically typed a little phrase. And then I was plugging it in, and the manager came up to me and she told me, it's like, you shouldn't be here. It's like, what are you doing? You can't do this. And I agree with her. I was like, you're right. I probably shouldn't be doing this. And as I say that, I plug in it to another computer. It's like, you should definitely call management. It's like, if you don't think I'm supposed to be here. I mean, I know I'm supposed to be here doing this, and then I plug it into another computer. But if you don't know, well, then you should definitely call someone, because I mean, I know I'm supposed to be doing this, plug it into another computer. It's like 5 machines I compromised, all the while agreeing with her that I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. When I come back after the 2 minutes and I asked her what was going on and what was she was thinking and why she didn't really stop me, she said, it's like, I knew what you were doing was wrong, but I didn't know who to contact. I didn't know the process or procedure. And so therefore I didn't know what to do. And that's the reason why you got away with it. And that's one of the key things on day one of every employee who is hired, from the mailroom to the CFO or the CEO. It's like on the first day of the job, each employee needs to understand one important factor that they are clueless about. And that is, they're part of your information security team. That part of their job responsibility that they could be fired for being negligent about is securing the equipment that they've been assigned to. It's like, if a delivery person is given a lorry, or it's like, man, it's like to deliver stuff. Well, then by golly, that delivery driver is expected to drive the speed limit, to drive safely, to use the seat belts, to use the equipment properly in a safe and secure manner, and not leave the vehicle unattended or unsecured so people can steal the contents of it. Why are we doing that same kind of level for our computers? The van, they could lose $60,000 from the van if it gets stolen. You can lose $350 million if something's still stolen from the computer. So why aren't we telling the employees the same kind of level of security and responsibilities they have for that computer equipment? It's like, because we do it with their vehicle equipment.
I think you're preaching to the converted as far as Robbie's concerned there. He talks about, I guess there's 2 things here. First of all, there's the Ghostbusters problem, knowing who you're going to call when a ghoulie appears sticking, USB sticks into your PCs. But then there's also Robbie's famous forklift truck driver comment as well, which I think talks exactly to your point here. It seems as though at times we lose a sense of proportionality when it comes to risk and securing our assets, be they physical assets or our digital assets.
When you talk about a person, it's like, it's hard for them to visualize. It's like, and understand that what happens in the cyber or virtual world. I mean, we even call it the virtual world. It's not the virtual world. That's not virtual. That is literally real world money and currency and work product. It's like, why do we call it virtually attacked? No, you're not. You're being robbed, not virtually. You're being robbed. People need to understand that connection. That it's like, the bank vault is not that big shiny thing that we like to look at and people rob and stuff. You think is like they're getting money. No, it's the computer. That's the new vault. That's where the money is, and that's what people are robbing. It's like, so they need to understand that equipment is not virtual. The work they're doing is not virtual. It is real, and it is impactful, and it is part of everything else.
That disattachment, that disassociation with who we are when we're acting online, whether it's in a video game or maybe when we're in our email or on a corporate system, there is a psychological state. It's called the online disinhibition effect, which also explains why people conduct online hate crimes and trolling and so on. It's the same kind of piece of research. Fascinating stuff. Listen, we are almost out of time for today. I just want to touch on one more thing, though. We've spoken around some different approaches to create in controlled educational manners, and we've spoken about these learning opportunities, these cyber learning opportunities that can help to mitigate these human vulnerabilities, that these risks that humans pose to organizations. But to wrap things up, this point that I raised right at the beginning about characterizing humans as the weak link, that's kind of the theme in some ways of today's show about human vulnerabilities and mitigating against those. The weak link, humans as the weak links. What are your takes? Because it's quite a loaded phrase. Is it true? Is it helpful? Do you think there are more constructive ways to express this quickly, Robbie?
So I don't think it really matters how you characterize it, David, because like I know a lot of security guys who are in both camps, and neither is right or neither is wrong. It's like, society, there's different spectrums of, piece of people that are all colorful and people over here are sort of like, it has to be this way or the highway. And I think that there's definitely a journey that's happening with the industry, right? Because things have changed in the last 10 years that, things that you could say 10 years ago, you can't say, things that you thought never would happen are commonplace in the industry. And I actually think that it is the outside forces that are going to drive what happens. So, for example, the SEC is talking about introducing mandatory reporting of breaches later this year, right? Well, what will happen there is that you'll see that change organizational perception of cybersecurity, because now they got a thing, they have to make I don't know what the final draft will be, but say 3 or 4 days, they have to come to the SEC and say, here's what happened. Like, most companies haven't a clue what happened within 3 or 4 days. Sometimes it takes 2 days for somebody to say, by the way, we're on fire. Did you know? Did you see that smoke? That's us. We're on fire. The same is true within Europe. Under GDPR, you have 72 hours to report. Yep. So things like that affect management. And so therefore, that drives the way they deal with it. And I feel that will harden approaches. But one of the things that Jason said, I think is really worth drawing out, which is, when somebody joins the organization, you sit them down and say, by the way, information security is your responsibility. Because I think you have a really great opportunity with, we call them joiners, and then you have leavers, but joiners, a really great opportunity for joiners to, they're in that honeymoon period, but they haven't talked to the old hands or find out what the way of the land. There's an opportunity to change behaviors. But I think I agree with Jason in that everybody involved in this, we're humans, right? So everybody's different. Everybody has different roles. We speak different languages. We have different preferences in terms of how we consume stuff. And the more that you can make it personal, the more you can connect with that individual and get them to buy in and just retain the vigilance, the paranoia, right? I'm a big believer in paranoia when it comes to this stuff. For a longer period of time, that really, really is helping with your readiness. And so I think to answer your question a long way, I think over time, it actually will move more towards a hardening and yet the reality is people are the weakest link. It's social engineering is straight in that back door. And there's only so much that taking it easy and kumbaya will get you. At some stage you have to go, do this or else you have to go. So it's a spectrum.
And listen, I'm afraid we are out of time. We're going to have to leave it there for today. Unless you've got like a 10, 20 seconds, are humans the weak link?
Yes. Saying humans are the weakest link is utter rubbish. It's like humans are the least invested in. It's like if we invested in our technology like we invest in humans, we'd be running snort boxes with PIX firewalls running and wondering why we're getting hacked. It's like we need to invest more in our humans, and then they're not the weakest link. It's stupid security who's not properly training their users. Our technology was never meant to be a wall to protect the stuff. It's like, and then have the humans fail because they were thinking that they were going to be secure. Humans need to be treated as the first line of defense, and technology as a safety net.
Hallelujah. I'm pleased we squeezed that in. Jason, we're going to have to leave it there for today, though. Where can people find out more about you and your work?
They can go to jasoneastreet.com, JYSONEstreet.com, or simulated-adversary.com to get a little bit more. And I also live stream on, well, I would say Twitter, but it's like whatever's going to be after Twitter finishes burning.
Fantastic. Robbie, various human vulnerabilities are laid bare in Season 1 of your Netflix-style cyber awareness TV miniseries, Cyber Police. Spoilers, will there be more of the same in Season 2?
Yes, we're releasing Season 2 of this new series in September, so we're all spinning up for that. I must send you across a copy for you to look at it, Jason. We're really proud of it because it sort of humanizes the whole thing and allows people to see it through a cop show.
Very cool.
People can contact me on Twitter, Meta Awareness, and through the Meta Compliance website.
Terrific stuff. Gentlemen, it's been really, really insightful to chat today. Thank you for joining us, Jason.
Thanks for having me and letting me, ramble.
It's high quality, high impact rambling. Thank you. And you too, Robbie.
A pleasure, David. Thank you.
And thank you all for watching us. See you next time. Bye-bye.